Welcome back to Insight. Scientists report that rapid melting ice caps in the Arctic could trigger polar tipping points, with catastrophic consequences felt as far away as the Indian Ocean. Temperatures in the Arctic are currently about 20 degrees centigrade above what would be expected for this time of year, which scientists describe as off the charts. Sea ice is at the lowest level ever recorded for the time of year. Tig Enright reports.
We've known about the threat of melting ice in the Arctic for decades. And yet we're still waiting for a plan to halt it that actually works in practice. The recently released Arctic Resilience Report warns that the speed at which its ice cap is melting could lead to catastrophic consequences all over the world. We know the reason: the increase in water and air temperatures because of man-made global warming. But here's something you might not know about the importance of preserving the ice. Sea ice has a bright surface. 80% of the sunlight that strikes it is reflected back into space, which helps to keep the Earth cool. As sea ice melts during the summer, it exposes the dark ocean surface. Instead of reflecting the sunlight, the ocean absorbs 90% of it, heating it up and increasing Arctic temperatures even further. The melting water from glaciers also contributes to rising sea levels. An increase of 1 meter is forecast for the 21st century. Experts predict that will have a direct impact on billions of people in India, Bangladesh and China, as well as along the US, Gulf and Northwest coasts. Greenhouse gases also contribute to the accelerated warming of the Arctic. In the recent Paris Agreement, nations pledged to cut emissions at a time when greenhouse gas levels and temperatures are getting worse rather than better or even stabilizing. China, the USA and Europe are the worst offenders. The Arctic is an inhospitable place, but it plays an important role in preserving the Earth's ecosystem. Difficult as it is to monitor, ensuring its preservation is something we all have a stake in. Tig Enright, reporting for Insight.
Well, joining me now is the award-winning environmental journalist Fiona Harvey. That's a very alarming set of statistics which Ty brought us there. Is this a situation from which we can recover?
We can but hope that we can recover. The problem is we don't actually know because we've never been in this situation before. This is something that's been predicted as long ago as a decade ago. Scientists were warning that this could start to happen, but these warnings have been largely ignored, and then suddenly we get this runaway warming. We get, as we've just heard, 20 degrees above the normal temperature. We get the sea ice, the lowest ever recorded for the time of year, and we really don't have a plan.
The way statistics are gathered, though, it is possible, is it not, that extraordinary warm period might then see a record cold winter period and record freezing and everything else. Do these things then have an equilibrium that is self-stabilizing? Or the concern is not, perhaps?
We don't know, again, because we haven't really seen this before. So it's possible that we will see some sort of recovery. But if we look at the science, if we look at what the projections are, scientists have been looking at this for decades, and they've also been looking at our past history. One of the things about the ice caps is that you can drill an ice core which goes back millennia.
Which reveals all sorts of data.
Reveals all sorts of wonderful things. At many points in the past, the poles were much warmer than they are now. At other points, they were colder. So we can sort of extrapolate patterns from that. So if you extrapolate, then you could say that, this situation is not irrecoverable. But what's different now is that we are raising greenhouse gas levels in the atmosphere to levels that have never been seen before in terms of the amount that's coming from burning fossil fuels. So That's a completely new element to add to these millennia of history, and as a result, we can't really predict what will happen.
You see, the accusation about the whole Paris thing was, all right, it's better than nothing. But it was a bit of global political theatre, if you like. And now rather modest ambitions have been signed up to by nearly 200 countries. Is it anything like enough? Or are we fooling ourselves by saying, oh, we can tick that box then, we've dealt with climate change?
Well, we can't tick the box yet, but Paris is something that we should not underestimate. The Paris Agreement was a major landmark, didn't go far enough, but it's taken us quite a long way if we fulfill the aims and the goals that we agreed at Paris.
Which is a big if, I appreciate, yeah.
Well, we've had some news from the United States that they're not terribly keen on Paris. However, other nations are still committed to the Paris Agreement, and the whole point of Paris was that it was never seen as being an end point. It was seen...
It was a stepping stone.
A stepping stone. It was seen as being something that we could build upon. So nations meet every year. They've just finished meeting for this year. And at those yearly meetings, they're supposed to agree further actions that will take us further than the Paris Agreement itself did. So it's a kind of a rolling process. So that is a very hopeful sign in itself, and we must never give up on that. But at the same time, are we moving fast enough? I don't think we are.
We dip into the risk of patronising other countries, though, don't we? When we say, OK, we need to do all this all together, and you and you, I don't know, outlying parts of India or something, still burning coal and everything else, you must stop doing all that and come with us to this brave new clean energy world. That's easier said than done, Fiona, isn't it?
Well, as with many things, it is easier said than done, but it's not impossible. And also, a very important part of the Paris Agreement is that the rich countries, which have benefited from burning fossil fuels in the past, have agreed that there will be finances flowing to the poorer countries to help them on the road to low-carbon energy.
To accelerate their progress through this?
Exactly, to accelerate their technological progression. Yeah. And that has many other benefits. So, for instance, at the moment, if you burn coal, that doesn't just have an effect on climate change, that has a very serious effect on air pollution. Yeah. So we get this smog in Chinese cities and Indian cities and so on. And that actually kills people. So if you stop burning coal, you use wind energy, solar energy, and so on instead, you don't have those deaths. That's a pretty good thing. So there are lots of benefits to improving our energy use, improving the way in which we generate energy, and we should be grabbing that opportunity.
And because of these consequential effects, you know, a rise in sea levels may seem inconsequential to many parts of the country unless you're living on an island which is only half a metre above sea level. Do you think that argument has been won? We need to do this as a one-world project.
There is nothing that we can do about climate change that does not involve the whole world. Because climate change by its nature, we call it global warming, it means the whole world. And the effects are felt, you know, as we just heard in your segment, we've heard that the effects of warming in the Arctic can be felt in India. Yeah. So the monsoon in India, which is vital for providing, you know, 1 billion people with their agricultural produce, that will be affected by climate change. So there is nothing in this world that is not affected by climate change.
Fiona, good to talk to you. Fiona Harvey, thank you very much. Now we end with our Insight Bite, a little something that we feel you should know. How would you feel taking a trip to the supermarket with your doctor? Hospitals in California have launched an initiative called Shop with a Doc. Doctors and nutritionists have been sent to various supermarkets across the state to offer advice and to help shoppers choose healthier alternatives. A third of US citizens are seriously overweight, and it's hoped that programs like this will begin to tackle the country's long-term obesity epidemic. And that's all for now. I'm Martin Stanford. That was Insight.